Hi guys, Allison here, the Bored Housewife. Thank you so much for joining me for another week's episode of the Bored Housewife. This week's episode is pretty special, I think. First, there's so much going on in our world right now that it's a lot and it's really heavy, and there's a lot of questions that aren't going to be answered anytime soon. And we don't know what's going to happen from this invasion with Ukraine and all of that. And I'm not going to try to dwell too much on it. I'm kind of just referencing it in the beginning, and then we'll kind of move past it because we all have smartphones. We have plenty of news sources. You don't need to hear me talk about that. But it does relate to what I'm going to get into here. So, next week, the month of March, I'm going to be working through the War of Art. And I'm going to come back to that later in the episode, but I just wanted to tell you guys again real quick here, and I'll try to remind you. For those of you that might want to buy this book, I bought it for several people in my life that I thought could use it. The first time I read it, it really changed things for me. So, it's not a philosophy book in the same way as like Plato or, Camus or some of the, like Kant, some of the other philosophers that I've talked and referenced before. This is just a writer, but I feel like his writing was really similar to the Art of Living book, and even some of the like ideas are really kind of similar too. So I felt like this would be really kind of interesting to take a philosophical take on and kind of talk about it that way. And especially for those housewives, those of us that are struggling to get some projects started or finished, or, whatever sort of little thing that we do that gives us our meaning and our values in our lives. So I'm going to come back to that. But yeah, so I'm going to get into all of this very soon. But the main topic today is about guilt. I talk about guilt a lot. I've talked about, those weird memories that we have, and we're like, bah, why did I do that? Why did I sneeze in my third grade class? That was so embarrassing, and it makes us feel really weird, right? There's other forms of guilt, though. So we're going to get into that today and then relate it to the book and why that all of this is coming up now, and especially for me is kind of special coming into this month of March while we're working on this. So everything's kind of coming together in a really interesting way. So anyways, please grab your beverage of choice. I'm sipping on a glass of wine, a Nero d'Avallo from Sicily. I got this in the 7-Eleven in Japan. Japan has the best 7-Elevens, Lawson's, and Family Marts. They're amazing. They have like hot food in there. It's really cool. But yeah, this was like 900 yen, which is like $8, and it's a really good glass of wine. So thank you, Japan. Thank you, Sicily. And cheers, guys. Let's get started. Alright, so I'm sure I'm not the only one that is feeling very distracted by our current events. I guess, like, for me, I just get obsessed with knowing all the information that's out there, and for me, it's just kind of part of the process of, like, understanding as best as I can what's going on, and, just trying to figure out, like, we all do. That's why we watch the news, that's why we read things, like, I think it's even more so because, like, there's a few people that I follow on Instagram that were from the Ukraine, so they're posting their personal experiences, and it's really scary. And so as I'm seeing this, I'm feeling really weird because here we are, like, still posting on social media, and, like, I made a post last week, like, it feels kind of weird to be just going on as like business as usual, but at the same time, like, what else are we supposed to do? Um, and so I've been feeling a lot of guilt from that. I've been feeling guilt from basically not having this on my front door. And, the reality of it is that we can't control what's going on there, right? Um, there's resources that you can reach out to and donate money if you want. But as far as like, we voted for our politicians, and we have no control over other countries' politicians. Um, if you're just a normal person like me, there's not a lot we can do, right? Aside from going to the Ukraine and picking up a gun and, going after some Russians. But, we're not going to do that. We're like, and it is, it is what it is. And the thing is I think it's also just a little bit scary because we also know, like, until Russia stopped, there's been threats and all that. And that's the stuff that I don't really want to get into. But I do feel really guilty and weird for just kind of living my life still because, other than some, like, COVID mandates that are still lingering here in Japan, my life is really kind of the same. There's not really too much difference. And that just seems really weird when there's so much bad stuff. And another thing to kind of think of is, like, this is very much, like, on the front page of everything right now. There's bad stuff that's happening in the world all the time that's out of our control. And not to take away what's going on in Ukraine, but it's really interesting the effects that social media can have and just how when something is, broadcasted all over the world, like the thing with Ukraine, just the kind of impact it can have on your life. So, I've been thinking about that, and then finally, like, I kind of got, to a good headspace with that this weekend, and just being, like, realizing, like, I have no control over this. The best thing that I can really do right now is just live my life, and the best way that I know how, and continue on, because, if these Ukrainians weren't in the scenario that they were in, if these Russians weren't in the scenario that they were in, they would be living their lives just as they would be. So I think that's some things that we have to think about. It's okay to be empathetic and feel and pray, of course, for these people, but it's also one of those where you can't let it stop your life either. Until it's on your front door, you just kind of have to, deal with it, pray, but continue on living your life. And it's okay to laugh and have fun and do cool things, because there's just absolutely nothing we can do, right? So that was the first thing that kind of set me on this idea, was this, like, obsession with guilt. So I want to make that clear because this is what comes into play later. Like, I had this obsessive guilty feeling. What can I do? Like, trying to get all this information. It just sent me down this whole spiral. So then I finally, my husband and I celebrated our 4th anniversary this weekend. We had a really fun time. And I knew, it was going to be a fun weekend. So I was like, okay, I can't dwell on this Ukraine thing. Like, I want to be positive. I want to have fun. And I want to enjoy our time together. So I tried to, like, put it out of my head. Well, then the last, like, Sunday, we went to this really weird place, okay? And this is where this is going to sound like a tangent, but I promise you it's not. Well, it kind of is, but it's part of the story. So we go to this really weird place, and I don't really know how to explain much of it, but at one point there is, like, a bird sanctuary type thing, and the birds are let loose. So it's like a cage you walk into, and there's just, like, parrots everywhere let loose. There's, like, sunflower seeds on these, like, tables and stuff. And then you can also go to this man whose job was to stand there, and for 200 yen you could get a cup of, like, bird food and, like, kind of hold it out, and the birds would land on you and eat from the cup. I did not want to do that because I love to look at birds, but, like, I don't want to get pooped on and all of that, So I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Well, while we're standing kind of, like, looking at the birds, we notice these giant rats starting to run around, and it's just like, oh my God. So we're, like, in this cage with, like, big ass Okinawan rats. Like, they're huge. I'm just like, oh my God, get me out of here. And so we went to another cage, and like, it was just like another cage. It was like, where do we get out of here? It was, I don't know, it was too much. But anyways, finally we get out with, not getting a rat on us, even though I had a close call. My husband said one like literally ran right behind my legs. And I was like, oh my God, that's so gross. And I just kept thinking, like, they were so brown, and I was like, I've never seen such clean rats before. My husband was like, what do you mean they're rats? And I was like, hey, in New York City and LA, those rats are city, dirty, sewer, nasty rats, okay? They're like, don't even have brown or gray coats. They just look like slime on them. I'm like, these rats were brown and fluffy. I'm like, I can't believe how clean they were. He was like, you're so weird. Anyways, but later on, I just got to thinking about that guy because I couldn't get over the rats being in there. And of course there were rats in there. It was an outdoor thing. It wasn't super well maintained. And there was a food source, right? Like all these like sunflower seeds and bird food. And I'm like, here this guy, his one job is just like stand there all day and like pass out food for 200 yen. And like, I'm sure he gets paid by the establishment, but I'm just like, he's fighting off rats all day. Like, what the hell? Like, that job sucks. Like, he has to smell in the bird, stuff. It is just like, I don't know. I just felt really bad for him. And the whole place was so weird. And so, just like the people that worked there, it just seemed like kind of a sad, weird place. I just don't know how to explain it. So I started to go down the spiral, and I've done this before. And I get really really weird about not having a job. So this in particular is like speaking to housewives or maybe stay-at-home moms. I don't know if anyone else feels this, but I get this like really crazy feeling of guilt of like the fortune that I have to be able to stay at home, and from all the positives and wonderful things and the things that we sacrificed for me to stay home versus like getting a job, that all goes out the window. And I just start thinking about like, who am I? Because there's definitely a feeling sometimes that I think I'm above those jobs, right? I'm not going to stand and pass out bird food in a rat infested bird cage because I feel like I'm above that. Or I'm not going to work in some sad, weird gift shop because I feel like I'm above that. But the reality is, and this is where the guilt plays and why it really comes in heavy, is that I'm not above it. No one is. And no one should think they are. So that's happened several times. And it's even happened when I had jobs. I'd be working like 3 jobs, and then all of a sudden I'd just be feeling this immense guilt. Like, maybe I should get one more job because I don't have all the money and I need more money. And I don't know where that comes from really, other than just like constantly hustling and whatnot. But it's just like, I go down this spiral and I just start thinking like how, like you're a brat, like these bad things in my head, like who do you think you are staying home? You should be getting a job and all this stuff. And most of the time, that's when this idea sets in that I need to find a job. And I start scouring the internet for open positions, and I'll like keep an eye out at local shops and stuff because I'll get a job anywhere. And that's actually how I ended up getting a job. When we first moved to Alabama, my original plan was to spend 3 years and write. Well, when I kind of fell off the wagon from writing for like a month, I went down this spiral, and I was like, well, if you're not going to write, then you should get a job because why are you just sitting at home not doing anything? So I started looking on the internet, and I found a position for American Greetings, which is basically like stocking cards at their like Walmart and Dollar General and stuff. And it's not like the job is horrible, but it was just like not necessary for me to get. And I thought that by doing it, like it would be nice to have extra money, and like that maybe it would like the idea that like people in motion stay in motion, people that are static stay static. I don't know what I don't know what that one is, but you guys get what I'm saying. So I just thought like if I had stuff going on that would inspire me to write, I'd get stories, I'd meet characters, all this. No, none of that happened. In fact, it actually took me even more so out of my writing headspace. So, that's what I do. That's my cycle, and that's something that I do over and over and over again. And I think part of it is like society tells us being housewives isn't, acceptable. And I've talked about this for the last few weeks. But it's kind of like this guilt that I'm an able body. I should be able to go out and find a job, no matter what that job is. I should do it. And it's really weird. And it becomes obsessive because, like the stuff on the news, I then become obsessed with looking up jobs. I become obsessed with like trying to get interviews and doing weird things. And it's all non productive because I just end up like, turning my wheels and not really going anywhere, getting myself in a scenario where now I'm not happy. Like, once I got the American Greetings job, it was kind of fun for like the first month. But then after that, like, I still wasn't writing, and I just was like, no job is what it makes it out to seem, right? And I wasn't getting paid very much, and it wasn't what I wanted it to be. And instead of quitting, I felt like I had to stay in it, and because that's who I am there too. Like, oh, don't quit a job because you don't like it, and you don't have to work it. Like, it just got weird. And the people I worked for were really nice and lovely people, so it's like I didn't want to let them down. But the reality of it was I wasn't enjoying myself, and I didn't need to do that. And so, anyways, like, this has been my pattern, and this is why it's so interesting that, like, this topic is coming up, because it relates a lot to what I'm about to get into with the book. So this time, when I started kind of going down there, and I was having these thoughts this weekend, about the people that worked, and I was starting to think about maybe you should start looking for a job. I realized that this is not productive thinking, and I'm so happy that this like came at this time. Well, not that it came, because those things aren't helpful in our lives, right? When we feel guilt, and these are the two things that I'm talking about. I'm sure, like, you guys, there's so many different things that we feel guilty and randomly about. I'm sure I don't know exactly what all of your feelings are on certain things, but I'm sure there's like, I can't even think, because these are just the two things that really send me spiraling sometimes. And so, if you're kind of like thinking about like, yeah, I kind of feel some stuff, just think about what are those things that send you spiraling? What are those things that end up being a huge distraction to you, that you just like end up wasting your time in, that you don't really go anywhere, and it's like you kind of exhaust everything. So sometimes, like, when I've done the searching for the job thing before, like, I've done that while I've had other jobs, and basically, like, I'll like a weekend I'll just freak out about money or something, and then I would just like search for jobs all weekend. By Monday, I would get distracted again with my current jobs that I had, or whatever my scenario was, and I would kind of snap out of it, and it was like I was good, and then it would be a long time before I went down that route again, um, but I guess like I just feel I just feel guilty for random things that are good in my life, and I think it's society that kind of puts that on us, because, so many people, when we celebrate the things that are good in our lives, so many people are quick to point out that other people don't have those things, or that, other people aren't fortunate enough to do this, that, or the other. Or other people want to point out that, well, you got the promotion, but I didn't get the promotion, and I've worked here just as long as you. Um, we all have our different scenarios in life, and so I think that there's just random things in society and like us humans in general, and this is why I always try to be really happy for people, even if I'm feeling really jealous or like really insecure that they got something over me, or whatever the scenario is. I try to feel good for them, because it's important to celebrate people's achievements and milestones, and just different things going on in their lives, because that's life, right? That's living. And the thing is, the bottom line of all of it is we don't have control over any of this sort of stuff. And so all we can control, and I say this all the time, is ourselves, our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings. So even if, I'm having like a feeling of jealousy, okay, well, I don't have to act on it. I can kind of push it off to the side and deal with that later, and still show my, happiness and my congratulations for a friend. So why do I feel so guilty, and why, like, randomly does it spark when I'm like looking at other people who are working? I don't know why it does that. But I'm sure we all have versions of that. So if this is something that you deal with, try to think of like what that is, I guess. And so basically, my point is because I've been reading this book to start preparing for next month's podcast episodes, I realized exactly what it was. And so I was able to nip it in the bud, but I thought it was kind of cool because I could share this with you guys and tell you how this book is so useful. So basically, the work of art, and I'm going to get into so much of this next week, the work of art talks about this thing as resistance. And basically, the resistance is kind of like the distractions in our lives. The author, Stephen Pressfield, he talks about how it's like an evil kind of like entity, spiritual entity almost, that like lives inside us and lives outside of us and has all these different things, okay? So for me, one of my things of the resistance is this feeling of guilt. And there's lots of different things. And so we'll get in, like I said, into all of that next week. But for me, it's this feeling of guilt. And it's like I become so obsessed with the guilt and become, to the point where I make myself feel so unworthy of being able to do these things that I talk myself out of doing them. Or I talk myself into doing something that is going to take me on a completely different trajectory. So my thing is writing, right? Or my thing is like making my podcast and all that stuff. Instead of sitting down to write, I'm going to go look for a job, spend hours upon hours and days upon days finding a job, exhaust myself doing that. Then if I get the job, then exhaust myself doing the job, so then I don't end up having to do any writing. And the resistance, it's like something inside of us, but it's also something like, it's not necessarily a part of us. So it speaks within us, right? Or it might act upon us, but it's not necessarily us. And so it's kind of an interesting way. And like I said, we're going to get into all this. But just to kind of give you a taste, so here I am reading this book again. I was feeling really good about starting to write. And then, like freaking clockwork, I start obsessing over getting a job, why I don't have that, and then also, like, timing-wise, just the thing happening in Ukraine was another thing that I could feed into my obsession of, like, why I shouldn't be focusing on anything else. And so the reason why I'm saying this to you now, and the reason why I even brought up the scenario with Russia and Ukraine, is because I think a lot of these, like, things that happen in our world, things that happen in our politics. I mean, we just went through COVID, right? Where it felt like the world, it felt like our lives were on pause for 2 years. But as we've all realized this last year, we have gotten, a few years older. People in our lives have passed. Things have still happened. The world has still spun, and it's not going to stop. And so to just kind of put our life on hold, I think for some of us, the little break was probably helpful. If you're spread a little too thin anyways, maybe it helped you kind of readjust priorities and figure things out. But now is it's time to get back going again, right? And we can't just pause every single time some devastating thing happens to humankind. We have to keep on, trying to make things and better ourselves and do all that, because that's all we can do. We can't always go and, I mean, unless you're in the Marine Corps like my husband is, like, like unless you join the armed forces, like, we're not the ones that are going to go over there and fight these battles. All we can do is pray, and in the meantime, work on ourselves, work on our own projects, work on things that, we want to do. So I wanted to share this because I just feel like there's so much going on, and diving into this book for some of you that are interested in this and have things that you've been wanting to get into. Maybe you have and this is what's cool about the book, like pretty much anything that you want to do, if you want to build a deck off your house, if you want to get back into working out, if you want to plan for a really cool vacation, like whatever that thing is, it doesn't have to just be artistic. Like sometimes it does have some of that sort of feeling, especially in the book, but just really anything that you have like a passion for and it's, somewhat of a project, the resistance can stop us from achieving those things. So, whatever's going on in the world, you might think to yourself, oh, right now isn't a good time to start it. And, there's never a great time to start things. But it's just like we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what tomorrow is. And we've all just been on pause for the last 2 years with COVID. And now this like other shit's happening. And it's just like, when are we going to get a fucking break? Can we like go back to the 90s, please? Not that the 90s were wonderful, but I was a child back then and I didn't know what was going on. So it felt pretty great to me. But I just like, and like here I am getting into this book to help people try to like overcome these things that stop us from doing what we're supposed to be doing. And I guess people could be making a lot of excuses right now, and they're totally, and that's the thing, right? They're totally like, you're totally right in thinking, I'm like, can't think of words right now, but you're totally right in feeling that way. Like I said earlier, I have all this guilt. But the reality of it is that we have to realize, like, there's nothing that we can do, and we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. COVID has shown us that. Like, we thought this thing was only going to be 2 weeks to slow the spread, and 2 years later, I'm still in Japan having to wear a mask everywhere, and just, like, last week, I had a curfew for 9 p.m. I had to be back on base by 9 p.m. Or, sorry, not on base, but couldn't be in bars and restaurants past 9 p.m. So it's just like, I would have never thought this. And I guess like I'm tired of putting the things that I want to do on hold because of life circumstances. The reality of it is that life can be mean, life can be, unpredictable. There's a lot that negatively it can impact us. It also can be very beautiful, it can be very kind, and it can be really comforting at times as well. There are certain, seasons that we have where you kind of get in a routine. And, for some people that feels really good. But it's just like, the point is, we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And we can't just stop doing things. And so I am making this podcast today so much for myself as a reminder that I can't obsess over what's going on. It's fine to read the news. It's fine to, be humble and grateful for the fact that I get to stay home. But I can't allow these little outside things to get into my head and make me feel this immense amount of guilt for something that's out of my control. And that really, at this point, doesn't have a large effect on my life. That doesn't mean it won't happen in the future, but even more reason to work on the things that I want to do, because we don't know, we might be the ones having to go out there and fight at some point, I don't know that. I'm not projecting that or anything at all, but I'm just like being serious. Like, we don't know what could happen, and more than likely nothing will happen, and maybe we have to deal with a little inflation in here and there. But, why continue to put things on hold when we don't have to? Okay, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. I think next month is going to be a really fun month, working through The War of Art. Careful, not the art of war. It is written by Steven Pressfield. He is a writer. A lot of his examples are about writing and like kind of overcoming that, but I promise you, if you have any sort of project or endeavor that you're trying to start, or you start and stop, this book will really help you kind of get through some of that. It's one that I've reread several times. Like I said earlier, I've sent it to several of my friends to, like, when we have conversations just about it's hard getting started on things. But, it's just, yeah, it's just an interesting time, and we're all, like, if you're sitting here listening to this, like, we're all really fortunate to be in the scenarios that we're in. It doesn't mean we have to constantly beat ourselves up and feel guilty because we're so fortunate. So, yeah, I'm just ready to kind of get started on some stuff. And another thing I was kind of thinking about, like, a lot of times when there are hard times, there's some really beautiful things that come about it. Like, I kind of was thinking about World War II, and just like so many men were away that women, had to like go and work in the factories and like build these Navy ships and stuff. And it's like, what a special time for women to find out that, they're capable of like doing this kind of work and wanting and enjoying doing it. And this is why, again, I just love being a housewife at this point in stage, because we all have so many choices. And some of that generation really brought forth, that women don't have to stay at home if they don't want to. They can work in the workplace, and just bringing the idea that there's other options. And like, I was just, what was another example I had? I can't remember, but again, I had mentioned COVID. Like, during COVID, people really got to take some time and like prioritize. And sometimes when there's scarcity, sometimes when there's things that aren't exactly perfect and we don't have all of the things that we wish, like under limited resources, sometimes people make some really cool stuff, because that's a time when creativity really has to be at its best, because it's like, okay, I don't have this, but may I have this? Like, this is really dumb, but the other night, shopping out here at the grocery store can be really hard sometimes. So I invited people over to make cheese ravioli, and they did not have ricotta at the store. I make my own ravioli, and I usually put in ricotta and mix it in with mozzarella and Parmesan cheese. They didn't have it. They did have mascarpone randomly. So I got that, and I was like, this is going to be really weird. You guys, it was delicious. So I tried something new, and now, like, that's going to be my first choice. And I know that's, like, super basic and whatever. But these are things I'm talking about. Sometimes when we're, only given a handful of things to work with, that's when some of the most and best and brightest ideas are brought about. So I just want you guys to think about that, because there is a lot of scary stuff going on, but there can also be a lot of beautiful things going on. I think we're going to see a lot of, interesting aspects of humans and of what we can do, and they're going to be on, one side or the other. It's going to feel very polarizing maybe, but also if we have our own stuff that we're working on, it can give us an escape to kind of get out of some of this. And I'm just excited to work through this book again, because every time I do, I get so motivated. It's very inspiring. And it's been very helpful to me, and I hope it's helpful for you guys as well. So I'll be linking this. There will be if you've signed up, last thing. If you go to my website, there is a link in the description to my website link, which is The Bored Housewife. if you scroll down the page, there's a box where you can subscribe to my monthly email. So I'll be sending out one tomorrow, hopefully, either the first or second, and I'll make sure on the link in the description that there is a link to the Amazon option to buy this, but also I'll try to give a description or something. I'm not sure how I can do the email newsletter yet, but talk about it in the newsletter. That monthly newsletter will be coming out and talk about what we're going to be talking about this next month, and then following that, kind of give like insight to what each month's topics are going to be, or at least somewhat of an insight. I also am going to be starting a blog this next month, and so there's another tab on my website. It's called TBH Blog, and you can subscribe for the blog newsletter there as well, or like basically when a notification. It's not, I guess it's a newsletter, but anyways, so yeah, please subscribe, please comment. Let me know what you guys think. Check out my social media. I've been posting some different kind of stuff on there, and I'm going to be trying some other new things, so hopefully I'm going to get that up and running. So yeah, lots of fun stuff in the next few months for me to get involved with, and yeah, I just hope I've inspired you guys to just keep focusing on bettering ourselves. That's really all we can do. And when you kind of just give in to that and realize it does make you feel better, and it helps you. At least it helps me in those moments where, like I was saying this weekend, I started spiraling and getting obsessed with the different things going on, and then not having a job randomly popped up, and it's not productive. It's not a good time. It's not a good use of our energy. It's just there as a distraction. It's just there to set you off course from doing what you need to be doing. So anyways, hope everyone is staying safe and healthy, and I thank you for watching another episode. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and cheers guys. I'll see you soon. Bye.